What's going on? This is the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass. I'm a chiropractor. I'm just having conversations with people in the profession who have really dedicated themselves and are great role models for anyone out there considering this path to become a chiropractor. Today, I have the honor of connecting with one of Life University's leadership team, Dr. Gilles Lamarche. Dr. Gilles, can you get us started by introducing yourself, letting us know what you were up to before you became a chiropractor and how you discovered this profession and decided to follow this path?
Absolutely. I made the decision to become a chiropractor. I was 12 years old, so it's decades, obviously decades ago. But I'd injured my low back at school, and 6 months into it, nothing was getting better. Somebody said to my mom, "You should take me to a chiropractor." And her comment, "Well, what's a chiropractor?" Nobody in my family had ever been to a chiropractor. You're talking like it's 54 years ago, and anyway, I ended up in a chiropractor's office, and he did a thorough consultation, examination, X-rays of my spine, and he talked about this word called subluxation. I'd never heard of it in my life. Talked about this was a recent subluxation, which was probably causing the pain in my low back. And then there were other areas of my spine that had subluxations that may be interfering with my overall health. And I wouldn't say I was a sick child, but I was always an unwell child. I always had like pain in my tummy, constipation, indigestion, things that you don't really expect a child to have on a regular basis. And my mom had taken me to a bunch of doctors, and everybody always said, "Oh, it's all in his head. There's nothing wrong with him. He just doesn't want to go to school." I loved school. It wasn't the issue. But anyway, this chiropractor, showed us the spine. My mom and I were there, showed the spine, and he had a autonomic nervous system chart on the wall, a peripheral nervous system chart on the wall. And then he related spine, spinal cord, and spinal nerves and how it fed and literally controlled all aspects of your body. Well, I'd never even heard that. It's pretty simple. You can find it in any anatomy, physiology book, etc. But nobody had ever taught me that. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But can this guy help me get rid of my back pain? And I didn't really care about anything else. Because like I said, I'd been to a bunch of doctors. They all said there was nothing wrong with me. Well, lo and behold, we agreed to start care. And, within a matter of a few weeks, not only is my back pain completely gone, but I've got normal physiological functions. Like I can eat food and digest it. I can go to the bathroom. Nothing hurts anymore. And I was like, wow, what is this? And so I kept questioning him. And really in that period of time, I made a conscious decision to become a chiropractor. So, obviously finished high school, went on to undergrad at Toronto, went to the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College, and I graduated in 1979. Had a great time at Chiropractic School, loved everything I was learning and continued to learn, developed relationships with a number of mentors. And I went into practice in 1979 with no expectation of failure. I mean, with a total 100% expectation of serving people and thriving in practice. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, within a matter of a few months, I had a thriving practice. And I practiced at the really, really high level for 25 years. And in the spring of 2003, I started having major issues breathing. Couldn't figure out what it was. I am allergic to animal hairs, particularly like cats, dogs, horses, kind of thing. And I always felt like there was an animal around me. I just felt this pressure in my chest. And then one day, one of my team members said to me, she put her hands on my shoulders and she was tearing up. And she said, "I'm just so afraid you're going to die in front of me." And I was 48 years old. And I was like, "Oh, no." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, listen to yourself breathing." She said, "You sound terrible." She said, "You look terrible. You look like you've aged 10 years in the past 6 months. There's got to be something seriously wrong with you." And I was like, No. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm allergic to." Anyway, the long and the short is she called a buddy of mine who's a medical doctor. I ended up in his office and I got diagnosed with a terminal condition. As you all know, Dr. Glass, terminal means it's going to end, called primary pulmonary hypertension. And my best buddy basically said to me, "You're going to die. You have 2 years or less to live. And the only thing medicine can offer you," and that was after seeing a number of specialists as well, not just, a PCP, unless you agree to a double lung and heart transplant, you're probably not going to survive more than the next 24 months. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been a chiropractic patient, right? I've been a healthy guy, healthy diet. I mean, don't drink alcohol, don't abuse my body. I exercise, I do all the right things. And here I was at 48 being told I had 2 years or less to live. And I studied that condition, and then I looked at double lung and heart transplant recipients, the quality of life that they have, or I would say don't have. And then I made the conscious decision to transition. I was like, I'm not going through this. There's no quality of life post. There's tons of trauma through the process. So if this is God's plan for my life, I will expire when my term is up. And so I retired from practice on the 14th of April in 2004, and basically went home to prepare myself to transition. You know, you do the things that people do when they know they're going to die. A lot of people just, don't wake up one day, or they just die, have no idea that it's their last day. But when people know that their last day is coming, they do certain things. You prepare your funeral, you do all sorts of crazy stuff that you and I talking today might never think that we would ever do. But that's what I did. And then 31 days later, on the 15th of May, I woke up, and the first thought in my head was, you're an idiot. You've been preaching this chiropractic paradigm of health and healing for 25 years. There's got to be something seriously wrong with your spine and nervous system. Well, as a chiropractor, you think, like, what a loser. You should think of that first. Because the next thought to me was, well, how could there be? I get checked by a chiropractor every couple of weeks, and if they deemed it important for me to get adjusted, then I get adjusted. But Ben, it was the third thought that really kicked me in the pants and woke me up. Because the third thought was, yeah, but never by the same chiropractor. So I was not a practice member in any practice. I went for lunch on a weekly basis with one colleague, and I was a different colleague, or sometimes a group of colleagues, but we got together on a weekly basis. So every Thursday I had lunch with at least one chiropractor, and then I would say, well, you want to come to my office, or, I'll go to your office, you can check me and I'll check you, kind of idea. And so on that day, the 15th of May, my brain kept going, just working through all this stuff and realizing, you haven't had a spinal exam, like a complete spinal exam, probably 20 years, complete neuro exam, and at least that long, no exercise of your spine in at least 20 years. So when all the noise died down, I was like, I'm going to call my former office manager and make an appointment and go in as a new patient and choose to become a practice member. So I went in, had the entire protocol done, and we discovered that my spine looked pretty darn good, except from C7 to T4. So for those of you who don't know where C7 is, you put your hand on the back of your head and you run it down along your neck. When you come to that bump at the bottom of your neck, that's C7. And then the next 4 vertebrae. So I was subluxated really severely at C7 to T4. I started getting adjusted daily. By the end of August, my pulmonary pressure had dropped from 57 millimeters mercury of pressure to 27. The normal is 15, but at 57, that meant that I had 4 times the greater back pressure from my lungs into the right side of my heart than normal. Your heart pumps just beyond 15 millimeters mercury of pressure, pumps the heart from the right side into the lungs, where it removes the CO2, it gets oxygenated, pumps the left side, and then goes to your entire body. Well, my back pressure was 4 times greater. So the human body has this amazing ability to adapt. So my body had adapted. It adapted by causing my heart to grow. And so I also had this condition called cardiomegaly, which had caused my heart to grow 2.5 times its normal size, so it could pump blood into my lungs. And like I said, by the end of August, my pulmonary pressure dropped to 27. Within 1 year, my pulmonary pressure was normal. Within 2 years, I no longer had cardiomegaly. So I'll be 66 in a couple days. I'm healthier now than I was at 48. And yes, I am a practice member in a chiropractic practice and get checked regularly and have been ever since. And I didn't go back into practice because we also discovered that I had what's called plastic deformity at T2, which means my second thoracic vertebra, the body of the vertebra, had actually sort of worn out on an unequal basis. So I subluxate there real easy. So even the thought of doing a chiropractic adjustment with cervical, thoracic, lumbar, it just grabs me there. And then I realized I was being called to do something else. And so I've been really blessed to work in 2 different chiropractic institutions. I spent 2006 to 2012 at one. Then I got recruited to come to Life University, which the beacon of light for the chiropractic profession. It's a phenomenal university, 110 gorgeous acres, and the largest single campus chiropractic institution on the planet, with a phenomenal leader in Dr. Rob Scott, a great executive team. So yeah, so every day I drive on this beautiful campus in Marietta, Georgia, and I go, thank you. And
Hmm.
that's pretty much the story.
I appreciate you eloquently really taking us through a good bulk of your life as a chiropractor. I'd like to touch on a couple of the elements that you mentioned. One was that you had no doubts coming out of chiropractic school because you had a great time in chiropractic school that you would be successful. And I think that we share some of those common experiences of me going through chiropractic school, having such a good time and eliminating so much fear and doubt inside of me about what it's like to be a chiropractor in a community, that when I got out of school, I had all the confidence in the world to start my own practice as a humble servant, not somebody that was expecting to have people knocking down my doors on day one, but somebody that was dedicated to reaching my community. And it sounds like you had a great time in practice. I'm having a great time. And then I also want to touch on being a regular practice member. I think as a prospective chiropractic student, you owe it to yourself to get some regular care with a chiropractor before you go to chiropractic school to really see what that process is like from a different point of view before you go out and start offering your services to your community as a student clinician or a student doc, or somebody who's a professional who's really trying to reach whatever that potential is that you have for yourself. When you get out of chiropractic school, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of ideas of what you want to do as a professional. And so, yeah, thank you for touching on that. And I have a feeling you were at Parker when you were there, that first school you were at, because I remember first seeing you on center stage at Parker University when I was a freshman in school about 10 years ago, and you were hosting people like James Chestnut, John DeMartini, Eric Plasker, Patrick Gentempo. And I've had Eric Plasker on the podcast so far. I intend to get those other three, but there was something that happened for me then. I was currently a student at a more medically oriented chiropractic school in the Northwest at that time, and I wound up transferring after that seminar because I heard the message over and over again that chiropractic was much more. It was much bigger than what I was being told at the school that I had started at, which I had chosen for the location. And I had visited schools like these vitalistic schools that you're currently serving at down at Life University or Life West. I had checked them out, but I wasn't fully understanding what chiropractic was and how different it could be depending on which school I went to. So I wound up transferring after seeing that message delivered over and over again, and you facilitating. I think you were the host of the seminar. So
Probably in Las Vegas, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And here we are, and I identify a lot with what you've been up to in your leadership roles in the profession, just watching you from afar. So I watched a video of yours a while back where you touched on the bigness of chiropractic, and you were hosting a mastermind on really bringing chiropractic to the masses at the same house that BJ had written The Bigness of the Fellow Within. Can you describe what the bigness of chiropractic is and what types of mastermind discussions are happening right now to move this profession forward? Like, where are we at? Because you serve in institutional advancement at Life University. Can you touch on some of the things that are happening, not only at Life, but also that you see happening in the profession?
Well, there's sort of two schools of thought in the chiropractic profession, and that happens in a lot of professions. And there's one school of thought that is much more focused on what I call a mechanistic approach. In other words, you have a joint that's out of place or your joint that's locked, you unlock it. If it's unlocked, you just leave the person alone. If they have no pain, you don't observe them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it really just focuses on the musculoskeletal aspect of human body and human function. Then there's the other school of thought, which I believe is chiropractic, period. If you read the history of chiropractic, how it all started, that is really focused on neurological integrity. And there is plenty of great research coming out now and showing us that chiropractic has a direct effect on neurological function, has a direct effect on brain function. And so I'm a CMC grad, that school is more mechanistic. But that's where I went to school, and that's the only chiropractic school I knew existed. It was, in the country that I born and raised and lived in. But through the process, my chiropractor, my first chiropractor at the age of 12, had suggested that I go to a Parker seminar before I graduate. And so I went to a Parker seminar when I was in third year in chiropractic college. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. James W. Parker, who was the founder of Parker Seminars, and then shortly thereafter created Parker Chiropractic College that now is Parker University. And I met so many phenomenal people at those 3 seminars that I went to before I graduated that I started just hanging out with them. I mean, Jim Parker was considered to be one of, the iconic chiropractor of his time. And I get to sit at that man's feet, every 2 months for a couple of evenings, listen to him from the stage, but then get to hang out with him in his suite just because he would invite everybody and most people didn't show up. Most people didn't come to the party. They came to a seminar, then they wanted to go party on their own instead of going to hang out with these phenomenal mentors. So I got to meet and be friend and still friends with people like, Dr. Larry Marks and Dr. Charles Ward, Dr. Kirby Landis. I mean, they're all people I still know to this day. And I met them in 1978. And it set my path to understand that there was something bigger than just correcting, a bone out of place, that there was a direct effect on the neurological function. And, Dee talked about it. Dee Palmer talked about the founder of chiropractic, and B.J. Palmer talked about it. We consider him the developer of chiropractic. I'm not sure if you're able to see, if I tip my screen, you can see those books. That's a portion of the series of the green books. The other portion is actually in my office on the campus of Life University. And in that beige colored book in the middle called Jim and Pal's Book of Potatoes and Meat, it's just basic procedures in the chiropractic practice. So that was Dr. Jim Parker's first book that he ever did with other Parker associate lecturers that he called pals. And so the bigness for me is the simplicity, actually. So it seems to be an oxymoron, isn't it, right? The bigness of chiropractic is discovering how simple it really is. The fact that your brain, first of all, the fact that you have an innate intelligence, that there's an intelligence that actually governs all aspects of your body, and that intelligence travels from brain to tissue cell through the spinal cord and the rest of the nervous system. That is the simplicity of chiropractic, and that's the big idea. And so we say, all organic systems are conscious, self-developing, self-maintaining, self-healing, provided there's no interference. And one of the major forms of interference that occurs is at the spinal level. So if there's interference with the electrical message going from your brain, let's say, to your arm, could it cause dysfunction of your arm? Well, the answer is pretty simple, yes. Well, what if there is interference on the message that's going from your brain to your heart or to your lungs, like what's happening to me back in 2003? Could it affect the function of your heart and your lungs? And unequivocally, the answer is yes. Now, do we have enough double-blind, placebo-controlled research to prove all that? Not yet. Are we getting more research? Yes. So for me, often I say, unfortunately, the chiropractic profession did not focus on raising money to do research because we just knew. So when I was in practice, I just knew. I taught this simplicity paradigm to my patients, practice members. They followed through. They got the results. They told everybody else. They built the practice. Mm-hmm. So other than handing out 5,000 business cards my first year in practice, which means I met a lot of people, I was kind with a lot of people, and I just shook their hands. And it was very simple because I was shy. I was really shy back then. I'd walk up and I'd introduce myself to literally every store owner in my town, every business in my town. I walked and I just went, I'm Dr. Gilles Lamarche. I'm a new chiropractor in town. You may have noticed, the building going up, If I can ever help you or your family or your staff, please give me a call. That was it. I'd leave my card. And literally within weeks, I was busting at the seams. Mm-hmm. And I was just sharing the message. And when they would ask me, okay, well, what the chiropractors do, I've got a system that I perfected over time. I don't know if I was doing it that well back in 1979, but very Socratic in nature. You know, what do chiropractors do? Well, what do you think chiropractors do? Well, usually you're not really sure. And so my next question would be to them was, if you think back to high school science class, what do you remember your teacher telling you was the most important system in the human body? Very few people answer the nervous system. Most people answer the heart. And if I was asking you the question today and you said the heart or anybody else, I'd say you're right. It's probably what your teacher taught you. Can I ask you a few more questions? And then my next question was, well, you look like if they're in good shape, right? I always want to be honest. I said, you look like you're in pretty good shape. Do you exercise? Yeah, of course I exercise. I said, did you ever notice that when you exercise, your heart starts to beat faster, your lungs start to breathe quicker, you start to sweat to balance your temperature? Did you ever notice that? Well, yeah, of course I noticed that. What tells your body to do that? And the typical answer I get is, I don't know, because people don't know. Nobody's taught them. I'd say, okay. I said, I'm going to assume that you went to bed last night and you woke up this morning and your heart was still beating. What told it to do that? And they go, I don't know. And then my next question to them is, what's in here? And everybody says the brain. And I said, my next question after that is, well, what does the brain control? And the common answer is everything. So what that tells me over the years of using that as a teaching method is that everybody on the planet understands that the brain controls their body. They just don't know how the message goes from the brain to all parts of their body. Because that would be my last question until I teach them a bit more. I said, so if the brain controls everything in your body, how does it give those messages? How does it? And the answer to that is, I don't know. The odd time somebody will say, well, your spinal cord, but they really don't know. And so I teach that simplicity, the fact that your body functions on an electrical system, and your electrical grid that sends all the energy and information for your body to function starts at the brain, works through all parts of your body, and then communicates back to the brain. And as long as the communication is going from brain to tissue organ and back with no interference, your body, your nervous system is going to function well, and you should function well. Now, there's other forms of interference. Obviously, if you're choosing to drink a big bottle of soda every day and you're choosing to eat crappy food, that's interference too. Right now, we're talking about neurological interference. Mm-hmm. And that's really chiropractic's focus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You said that the profession hasn't focused its intention on raising money for more research, and it's mainly because we just have this ability to see results with or without the research. We know what's truth for us. Can you talk about pre-chiropractic? I don't know how much you've reflected on it or thought about it, or how I know that the schools, you're involved with schools, so there are outreach programs. But what about investing in infrastructure for a pre-chiropractic student to really explore the philosophy, science, art, business, and communication potentially, but just really wrap their mind around what it's like to become a chiropractor? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but historically the profession has also said chiropractic finds you. You don't find chiropractic. It's a calling. And so a lot of the times people never find chiropractic. They never hear about it. It's not represented. And I believe that creating an agenda for equal representation of the profession in the eyes of these students who are really just bombarded with information these days, but just putting it in front of them would make a difference. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's a phenomenal idea, and the first way that I would suggest to anyone who's interested in chiropractic is go visit a lot of chiropractors. I mean, just ask chiropractors if you can shadow them. If we could get in front of, obviously, career counselors in high schools, get them to understand, the power and the value of chiropractic, and have chiropractic as an option for many of the students, that would be wonderful. These pre-chiro clubs that start, typically the pre-chiro club is someone who's already interested in becoming a chiropractor. So, to get the big message of chiropractic to the masses is still going to require a lot of time. We've been vilified as a profession. Not to get into the political side, but there was a concerted effort to contain and eliminate the chiropractic profession by the American Medical Association for decades and decades and decades.
Mhm.
And that's sometimes the stigma that exists in the chiropractic on the outside, rather, towards the chiropractic profession, often is based on that innuendo. None of it was factual. So, for anybody who's interested in becoming a chiropractor, I would say your job is to learn a lot more about the chiropractic profession. And you, Dr. Ben, you said a while ago, you should be under regular chiropractic care to experience what chiropractic care can do for your life. I mean, obviously, it changed my life as a 12-year-old. It saved my life as a 48-year-old. My youngest son, who's now 35, soon to be 36, was blinded in a fireworks accident when he was 14 years old. We were told he'd be blind the rest of his life, and 5 days later had 20/20 vision. So how do you explain that? And so there's certain things that seem to be unexplainable, but when you dig deep and you start understanding basic anatomy, basic physiology, you go, you know what? This is how the body was created to function. I mean, how did two cells come together and this little spark occurs, an electrical spark occurs when the sperm cell and the egg cell get together, and through multiple divisions create a beautiful baby 9 months later? Well, because there is an intelligence in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And the intelligence that functions inside of you we refer to as innate intelligence. And so instead of thinking that your body is stupid and can't do things, in the chiropractic world, we help people understand that their body is smart. I mean, your body is smart. I mean, I had a couple students over for dinner last night, so I was preparing dinner, and we have some great knives, and I was cutting strawberries quickly at the end to prepare the meal. I sliced my thumb. And I'll tell you, you'd be hard-pressed this morning. This was last night about 5 o'clock. You'd be hard-pressed this morning to notice, unless I really showed you my thumb, that there's a cut on my thumb. And it was cut and it was bleeding. And yes, I cleaned it quickly and I put a Band-Aid on it. But I woke up this morning and I took the Band-Aid off and I was like, wow, it's almost 100% healed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? No interference, right? I brought the wound together by putting a Band-Aid. So I corrected the interference of separation, brought the cells together, and with its own intelligence, my body healed this cut.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it can heal a cut, it should be able to heal everything else and anything else. Mm-hmm. As it, when there's no interference. It happens to be on the other thumb. I got a splinter on this thumb, and I didn't realize I hadn't been able to pull it all off. And a week later, now it's still really, really hurting, and there's this huge bump on it. Of course, it's infected. Why? Because the body and its intelligence actually wrapped itself around that piece of that splinter that was still there to protect me so it wouldn't go through the rest of my body. So all I need to do is to clear the interferences, get a little pin and dig at it and find that darn little piece of splinter and pull it out. And now all of a sudden my thumb's almost like fully healed a few days later. So understanding that the body has this innate ability to heal for me is actually the first thing, and trusting that. And I think a big part of our job in a chiropractic office is to get people to understand that the big idea of chiropractic is recognizing that your body was made to heal. And it's simple when you understand that the nervous system is responsible for communication. Any interference in that communication is going to hinder you. When you reduce or correct that interference, rather, then the body is back to working as it should. So how could I be dying at 48 and thriving at 66? Well, because I got the interference corrected. And, if you were here and you want to go, it's a beautiful day here, even though it rained a lot last night, it would be a great day to go out for a run this morning. I go out and run a 5K with you, no problem. Doesn't matter what age you are. Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't even walk 100 feet in 2003 because I just couldn't breathe. And the fact that my body completely healed when the interference was corrected, if that's possible, what else is possible?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you for your insights and just keeping it real on what chiropractic is and the big message of what chiropractic's all about. Can you just wrap up by plugging Life University real quick and talking a little bit, just in a 2-minute sort of commercial,
Absolutely.
what's Life University about and why people should consider that school?
I'll tell you, if you have not seen Life University, you owe it yourself to come and visit. As beautiful as our campus is, 110 gorgeous acres, the people is what makes up Life University. So when I give somebody a tour, I usually start with, from its humble beginnings in 1974 as Life Chiropractic College, occupying 1/3 of a rented industrial building on Barclay Circle in Marietta, Georgia, and offering one degree program. Life University has grown to encompass 110 beautiful acres with hundreds of thousands of square feet of classroom, lab, offices, and residence space. We do have space on campus for just shy of 700 residents that live in housing. We have a beautiful 27,099,000 square foot 4-floor undergrad building for students. We also have a beautiful building that houses chiropractic students, about 350 total, all beautiful 2-bedroom apartments, again, right on campus with a parking deck. So we have all the amenities, if you like, but we have people that are committed to teaching chiropractic, teaching the philosophy of chiropractic, and all of that founded on the philosophy of what's called lasting purpose, to give, do, love, serve from abundance with no expectation of return. That's the philosophical foundation of the university. We now offer 20-degree programs, so obviously chiropractic remains our flagship program at Life University, but we offer 19 other degree programs. We currently, I think, have 21 or 22 intercollegiate sports teams. So we've got a beautiful turf field, we've got a beautiful rubberized, 400-meter track, and another grass field in a different part of the campus. Beautiful gym facilities, beautiful brand spanking new or brand spankingly renovated fitness center for our students and faculty. A beautiful brook that goes right through the center of the campus. So the campus itself is beautiful, but also the cutting edge technology that we've got going on. Our anatomy lab is all virtual. We have 4 what's called Anatomage tables. If you want to Google that, Anatomage, Anatomage, like huge giant iPads with real digitized corpses to study anatomy, unlike anything you've ever seen. Phenomenal. And we know, based on multiple studies, that the learning outcomes of learning anatomy on the Anatomage tables is much superior from doing dissection. And then in the spring of this year, 2020, we developed, our research department actually developed PAT, which is a palpation trainer and an adjusting trainer. And it's, I often want to say a dummy, but it's a mannequin, maybe similar to the Recessian that you may have learned how to do CPR on, but 67 electronic sensors connected to a computer. So we have 20 of them, each connected to a computer. So when you're palpating, it tells you exactly where you're palpating. So as you learn your palpation skills, how do you find L5? How do you find C1? How do you do this, do that? It's all hooked into a computer system. And these mannequins pretty much feel like a real fit male, if you like. So technology that was developed and fully manufactured on the campus of Life University with the support of a special effects movie studio that actually created like the skin of the body, so it feels quite real. So a lot of those technological advances happening. We have a research department that's becoming more robust. We're raising more money to conduct more neurologically centered research. Also doing joint research with Dr. Heidi Havoc out in New Zealand, for example, and other institutions in the United States, because we recognize that research really is the currency of cultural authority. And we've got to conduct more research to prove what we anecdotally know in practice to be true. If you've been in practice for any number of years, you know that chiropractic works. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind on the value and the importance of chiropractic as part of the healthcare paradigm globally. However, without the research, there's certain conversations that we just can't have with people because they don't want to talk to us until we can back it up with facts. So
I'd love to have you back on for a further deep dive into just like the world of chiropractic today and what's going on, what you see around the profession, because I'm sure you've got your finger on the pulse.
a
I
lot.
have to run, but I really appreciate your time, and you've given a ton of value to any prospective student out there who's considering this path. Thank you so much, Dr. Lamarche, for everything
Thank,
that you do for the profession.
thanks for having me. And, all information at life.edu. And 4 times a year, we host what we call a life leadership weekend for prospective students, just to come and experience life. We don't sell you, just come and experience it. It's a beautiful space. And when you meet the people, you might just know that that's the right school for you.